Welcome to another edition of You Build It University's online training. Today's training is going to be on the delivery of the construction manual, also known as the book presentation. Book presentation is normally scheduled the day of the closing of the construction loan. The client usually comes directly from the construction loan closing to our office to receive the manual. At that time is when we collect 50% of our money at the delivery of the construction manual. The way I like to start out my deliveries is with a plan review, another plan review. We usually print the plans in our office for our clients. It's actually the first time that they've seen the finished printed plans. They've actually seen them online, they've approved them. They might have got a PDF of the plans and they've approved them, but they haven't seen the large section of the plans yet, the roll of the plans. So I like to start off with a review of the plan. I like for them to give me a tour of the plan, give me a tour of the house. They're excited about their house. It's the first time that they've actually seen the big copy of the plan, and they want to, I want them to tell me about it. I want them to get them excited. I'm also getting them involved in their project at this point by doing that. As they're giving me a tour of their house, starting walking in the front door of the house, I'm educating myself at the same time. I'm looking for windows that make sure they meet egress. I'm looking for door openings. Going into the laundry room, for instance, I want to be sure it's a minimum of a 2.8, a 3.0 preferably, to be able to get a washer and dryer in. I'm looking for hallways to make sure they're correct. Staircases, I want to be sure the staircases are wide enough. On this particular plan I'm looking at right here, right now, there were several mistakes that I had actually caught on this plan. I have a 2.0 door going into a laundry room, which is unacceptable. I can't get the washer and dryer in. I have a 1.6 door going into a laundry room. Just little mistakes like that could affect the beginning of the build, and if it wasn't caught at this time, it could get the client in trouble, and I feel that's part of our responsibility to help the client be sure they don't have any mistakes starting out. Also want to look and see if there's a center island, if we're going to need electricity or power going to that center island. If there's a downdraft cooktop in that center island, then it would have to be a vent pipe that would need to be installed before concrete. Things like that is what we're looking for, just to make sure we don't have any issues for our client. If it's a 2-story house, also I want to look and make sure if there's a vent hood, if the vent hood's not coming up in the middle of a bedroom, the vent pipe. I catch little things like that all the time, so that's why I think it's very important to review the plan again with the client. I don't want them to, I don't want the client to actually think that it's my responsibility to do that for them. I want to review it together. It's their project, but I want to review it with them together. I always like to leave the plan out because I'm going to be referring back and forth to it periodically throughout this training. The construction manual is a big, intimidating looking book. When I usually walk into the room, the clients are sitting there and they got that deer in the headlights look. It's like, oh wow, that it's overwhelming, it's intimidating. I want them to feel comfortable about it. It's really simple if they listen and they understand, and it's broken down into simple parts. There's an old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's what we're going to do. We're going to start taking bites out of this. In the front of the construction manual is a construction summary CD. This basically tells everything that's going to be happening in the flow of the construction. Keep in mind that this CD or this CD in this book is generic for nationwide. There's going to be things in here that may not apply to you and your region. There's going to be terminology in there that's a little bit different from us in our region. So they'll need to rely on the consultant to help with to help them determine what's what and what applies. There's also a couple of cards in here. We have one from actually Home Depot. It's a Pro Rewards card. It's actually for Behr paint. This gives us, I believe it's 25% discount or something like that for Behr paint products. When they check out, all they need to do is type in the phone number for our office, and it automatically applies the discount for Behr Paint products. We also have another one for Sherwin-Williams. Sherwin-Williams is another paint supplier which offers a discount. I'm not exactly sure what the discount is for Sherwin-Williams. I think it might be 35%, but don't quote me on that. So they can take the Sherwin-Williams card to the when they buy Sherwin-Williams paint and receive a discount. At this time, we go over the construction invoice with the client. 50% is due when they receive the manual. 25% is due when they begin to start a frame, and the final 25% is due when they start drywall. Also in the front of the book, if they're using a post-tension foundation, we have a sheet in here which is an application for engineering. Post-tension foundations have to be engineered. We help the client fill out the engineering form at this time. If they're doing a storm shelter in the garage floor, we like to have by whatever size paper this is, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with a plan on here. We want them to actually draw on the plan where they want the storm shelter and initial it. They also will, we want them to sign the application for engineering, saying that it's okay to send it off. We send it off together and it starts their engineering. Could take sometimes up to 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get the engineering back. They will need the engineering back if they're getting a building permit to accompany their building permit application. We also have in here a sheet. This sheet basically says that they have approved their set of plans. This is the correct set of plans. We usually print them 6 copies of the plans, 6 complete full sets, and we also print them an additional 6 sets of plans of just the floor plan only. We help them count the plans together, make sure all 6 sets are there, everything is complete. They sign the sheet acknowledging that the plans are there. It also says that if they wanted us to print additional sets of plans, we charge them $3 per page. I get them copies of all this at the end of the meeting. If they do have building permits, it's going to be required for their build. We provide them with a copy of the building permit application for their municipality. We help them complete the building permit application. The very first page in the construction manual is an acknowledgement saying that we are moving into construction today. We're out of planning, we're out of bidding, we are actually we're starting construction. We usually take this out, they sign it, they date it, I sign it, I date it, I give them a copy at the end of the meeting. The next page in the construction manual is the single use policy, basically saying that this is for their project only. It's not to be used, sold, given away. They can't go out and start their own construction company. In this case, this is Dosser. They can't go out and start Dosser Construction using our manual. Everything in here is copyright protected, and it's not supposed to be used for any other project but their own. There's also a copy of this in their contract. Table of contents basically tells what all these tabs are for. Welcome tab, things to do, telephone log, so forth and so on. Welcome tab is basically a letter from You Build It. Welcome them to the You Build It family. The most important part of a successful project and key to success is good communication. Communication, communication, communication. Very important that the client communicates. We have to communicate with your lender. You have to communicate with your subcontractor. They have to communicate with their consultant and the You Built It office. Very important. A lot of projects go south because of lack of communication. Very important. The next tab is a things to do list. Basically a tool to help keep them organized. I usually will break out a piece of the first things to do list because I plan on giving them some things to do before the end of the meeting. We notice that they're in triplicate forms in case they want to delegate. If they have a spouse that wants the wife to go do something or the husband, vice versa. If they need the subcontractor to do something or the consultant, in the case of a plus contract, then that's why they're in duplicate forms or triplicate forms. Behind that is the telephone log. A telephone log is actually just another tool that we provide to help keep the clients organized. If they have a text message, telephone call, whatever, we encourage them to jot it down, what they talked about, the time and the date. Behind that, cost review and budget. This basically talks about the importance of good accounting. Our bidding coordinator usually will send the client an Excel spreadsheet of their budget, so they're able to when they make a draw or when they make a payment to somebody, they add it in, and it automatically keeps a running total of where they are in their budget, so they can see where they are at any time. This is homework for the client. They need to read this and understand the importance of the good accounting. Behind that is usually a copy of the budget, the client's budget. I like to look at the bottom line of the budget, show that to the client, be sure that we're actually on the same page. This is the correct budget that we're working off of, and the amount that they just closed on their construction loan. Behind that is what our bidding coordinator calls the pretty pages, which is actually a colorful, this is an example of what they're going to be being sent in the email as far as their Excel spreadsheet for tracking their budget. Change orders. Very important that we get a change order. If we make corrections to the plan, redline them in, before we give the plan to a subcontractor, we don't really necessarily need a change order. But for instance, if we make a change after the fact, I actually had a client that thought she had the perfect plan. She'd been working on it for 6 months here, trying to get the plan correct, exactly how she wanted it. She thought it was perfect. After the walls were framed, she walked into the house for the first time, and she says, "Oh my gosh, I don't think my China hutch is going to fit there. I need the window moved down a couple of feet." So she went to the framer and asked the framer, "Hey, I just need to have my window moved down a couple of feet. I made a mistake." The framer, he says, "Oh, no big deal, ma'am." He goes, "I'll be more than happy to move that down for you. It's no big deal." And the way that he said that, she just assumed that it was going to be no charge, free. Come to find out, it wasn't free. When she gets the bill at the end of the job, he ended up charging her $200 for moving that window down. So anytime that you make a change, you always want to get a change order and have a change order filled out. We have several of them in here. So all you do is you make a description of what you're changing, and you agree on an amount. You put the amount on there, you sign it, the subcontractor signs it, and then there's not an issue when it comes payday. Behind that, project planning. This talks about ordering materials. Good questions to ask when you order materials. Is there going to be a delivery charge? Is there going to be a restocking fee? How much notice do you need for the material? Before I order the material for the time that it's actually will be delivered. Weather conditions. Obviously, they're not going to, subcontractors aren't going to work when it's adverse weather conditions. If it's freezing outside, they can't pour concrete, they can't lay brick, they can't do stuff outside. They will not deliver materials when it's raining. They won't deliver, normally roofing materials or sheetrock, anything like that. Trim material. Holidays, working on holidays. Subcontractors won't work on holidays normally, Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, things like that. So these are basically setting expectations early and knowing what to expect. Behind that, we have some charts here where they're actually in chronological order the way things happen during the project. And it's certain topics like area of construction, like say for instance your temporary PO. It gives a description of who does the work. It tells an approximate timeline that it could take to get a temporary PO and temporary power. And then it tells if there's any permits or building department requirements. So if you have any questions on certain items like that, for instance, a well, how long is it going to take to get a water well? You look under water wells and it'll tell you who does the work, the approximate timeline, if there's any permits are needed, and if there's any building department or permits needed for that particular thing. So instead of having to get on the phone and call your consultant to ask a question like that, you can pretty much find the answer in these charts right here. A couple of pages back, there's the same charts. It talks about roles and responsibilities. It's a roles and responsibilities guideline. There's also topics of discussion, an issue that might come up, and a discussion that relates to that particular issue. It tells what the homeowner's role is, it tells what the consultant's role is, and it tells what the vendor's role is. So again, homework for the client to go through and review and read some of these things. Very educational. Behind that is the glossary. Your glossary is common construction terms that you're going to hear in the field you may not be familiar with. I had a lady the other day was asking the framer, when can I schedule my roofer? And the framer, he starts rattling off all this stuff. I need to put on the joist hangers, and I got to put on the belly bands, and I got to put on the washers and the nuts, and he just starts rattling off all this stuff. And she just sitting there shaking her head. And as soon as he walked off, she looked at her husband and she said, "What the heck is a belly band?" Well, this basically tells you what a belly band is. It tells you what joist hangers are. It's the construction lingo, if you will. Behind that, the next tab, selecting a vendor. Just good questions, good homework for you to read, but it gives you good information on when you're selecting a vendor. Good questions to ask. How long is it going to take to get, a vendor is also a subcontractor, so keep that in mind. So good questions to ask him. How long have you been in business? How many people works on your crew? Do you have references? Do you have some work I can go look at? It's very important that you select the correct vendor. Another very important question to ask them is, are you insured? Do you have general liability and workers' comp insurance? That's very, very important that you make sure that your subcontractor has the insurance, and they send you a copy of their certificate, their insurance certificate, before they start any work on your project. Behind that is pre-construction planning. Basically, this is what we're going to be doing in this meeting today, in this book presentation meeting. We're going to be helping you review, cost and description of materials. We're going to help you finalize your building permit if applicable. We're giving you your construction manual. It says that we're going to give you a NAHB safety handbook, which is for OSHA. We actually do not give out handbooks. We show you a link to the OSHA website. As the builder, you are responsible for job safety. Very important that if you see something going on that doesn't look safe, that you put a stop to it. You confront that subcontractor, whatever it may be. If they're stacking, 14 pallets on top of the back of a pickup and they're standing on it and they're trying to, deliver shingles up there or something, that's not safe, So it's your responsibility for job safety. We're discussing your role as a project manager. You are the builder. We're the consultant. It'd be real easy for us to just go build the house for you because we're experienced. We've done it. But this is you build it. You are the one that's responsible for building this house. We're going to help you and we're going to advise you if you have any issues, what to do, how to handle the issues. We're going to tell you step by step what to do next. But you are ultimately the builder and the project manager. We're helping you the process with selecting a vendor. I've already did that. Was back with the selecting a vendor tab. That is homework for you, so to be sure and understand and read this. So everything on this list is what we're actually doing in this meeting today. The next tab is Stage 1 Planning Meeting. These are actually, they're called the Stage 1 Construction Schedule. You'll also hear them referred to as your flow chart. In this meeting today, we're going to go over Stage 1 flow chart only. There's no reason to go into Stage 2 and Stage 3 in this particular meeting because it's just going to overwhelm you. Once you get to the end of Stage 1, then we'll call you back into the office and we'll do Stage 2. The first thing it says to do is get a building permit. It also says, please try to follow these steps in progression to manage your project. We want to be sure you don't have, get confused by jumping around doing all the different steps. At the same time, we're going to help you when it comes time, say we're doing sheetrock on the inside and we're able to start bricking on the outside. So there's going to be a little bit of multitasking. We're going to help you. I've actually had a lady says, no, Ron, I can't start bricking yet because it doesn't say to start bricking yet in my flow chart. I'm going to try to help you stay 2 to 3 weeks, a month ahead of time, scheduling people. We don't want to wait till we need a bricklayer to hire a bricklayer, so we're going to try to keep this project moving for you. try to help you. We don't want any delays in the process. Time is money. You're paying a lot of money on construction interest loans, so we want to be sure that your project keeps moving. First thing it says to do is get a building permit. If you're using a post-tension foundation, you will have to have your engineering back. So the engineering form that we filled out to begin with, we'll send that thing off at the end of this meeting today. You have to have that engineering back if you're using the post-tension foundation, and it has to accompany your building permit application when you take it to the city. So there's going to be a little bit of time waiting right here, waiting on that engineering to come back. Like I said earlier, sometimes it takes up to 3 weeks to get it back. Sometimes we get it back in 4 or 5 days, depending on their workload and how busy the engineers are. So again, managing expectations, this goes back to expectations there. Don't expect it to come back in 4 or 5 days after I've told you it could take up to 3 weeks. So be patient. Some of the hardest part of starting the project is the starting of it, is getting things done in order. Step 2, set up an account with a lumberyard, a concrete supplier, and an electrical co-op. Unless you just know who you want to use to set up an account with for a lumberyard, I really hate to see you just start running out and setting up accounts with lumberyards. You know, you obviously want to know, you want best price is one thing. You also want to refer back to your selecting a vendor, you know, the questions that you ask them as far as delivery charge, restocking fees, things like that. Service. It's not all about price, it's about service as well. So you need to take both into consideration before you go set up an account with somebody, especially a lumberyard. If you was to send 4 sets of plans to 4 different lumber companies, depending on their estimating program, you're going to come back with probably 4 different material takeoffs, and you're going to have 4 different bids. So it's not an apples for apples comparison. I personally like to try to select a framer first. I like to have the framer do me a material takeoff. A material takeoff is a material list. Even though it may not be as accurate or as detailed, and everything may not be as good as a lumberyard would be, it's still an apples for apples list. So if I send his list to all the lumber companies, when the bids come back, they're all bidding off the exact same list. That's why I suggest to do that. Then we can make the decision on who you want to set up an account with. Next thing, it says set up an account with a concrete supplier. If you're using a post-tension foundation or a monolithic or something that the bid is a turnkey estimate, concrete is going to be included in that. They're going to include concrete, sand, steel, everything required for that project. So as a one-time builder, you may not need to go set up an account with a concrete supplier. You'll need to visit with your consultant and your contractor about that. The electric co-op says set up an account with electric company. I call that contract for service. After your temporary pole is set, you'll need to contact the electric supplier, the electrical provider, to to come out and hook the power up. So contract for services, they're going to need your billing address where you live now, and they're also going to need the address of the job site so they know where to come and set the meter. Next thing in the list, it says order brick. Go shopping, because there's special order possibilities. You don't necessarily need to order the brick right now, but you do need to find out how ready available that brick is. In some cases, it could take up to 2 months to get brick, depending on what the order is, what you're ordering. Here in Oklahoma, we have red clay, so we have red brick. So if a client was to order something, a white brick or something, it may have to come from Texas or from another plant, and it could take a while to get it. So what we want to do is be sure that we're staying ahead of the game and we're find out the availability of the brick early enough in the game. Usually on perfect conditions from this day forward, you're ready for brick in about 2 months. You don't want to all of a sudden start looking for brick when you're ready for brick. You want to already have that brick ordered. After that, we're going to schedule an electrical contractor to come and set up a temporary pole. After they set the temporary pole, if it's in a municipality where it's going to have inspections, the electrician will call in for an inspection. Once it's inspected, The city will release it to the electrical provider, and then they will come out and set the meter as long as you have the contract for service in place. And then we're going to call U-Build-It for a scheduled site visit. It's going to be site visit number 1. Usually at that particular site visit, we come out to the job site, and we usually bring some flags. We got some little wires with U-Build-It flags on there. We'd like to help you flag your lot, flag the size of the building pad that you need. We look back at the plans and say the overall width of the house is 58 feet. We're going to help you set a flag at 78 feet. We want a minimum of 10 foot all the way around the property. So if it's 60 foot, 10 inches deep, we're going to help you set flags at 80 foot, 10 inches deep. So we have that 10-inch buffer all the way around. Again, I don't do it for the client. I make the client do it their own self. I'll bring out a wheel or a tape measure. I'll bring the flags. I'll show them the number. We agree on what the number is. I let them wheel it off, stick the flag in the ground. We determine the direction the house is going to be facing, where it's going to be facing. And once we get the flags staked, then we usually will measure it from corner to corner to square it. The numbers, the measurements should be the same from corner to corner to corner to corner. We know it's square. I make the client do that themselves. Again, what I'm doing is getting them involved in their project. This is U-Build-It, not Ron Builds It. We also will have them place a address sign and a permit number if they have one already on the site. We also put a U-Build-It sign in the front yard if it hadn't already been placed. We normally like to do that at our initial site review. We'll get into that later, but if the sign hasn't been placed, we like to put a sign in place. That way subcontractors can find it. We know that they're at the right location. The next thing is we're going to schedule the excavation contractor to come out and do the building pad. We may or may not need a load of gravel for the building site. If we do, we need to try to get it out there. A lot of times our excavation contractor can come out and actually spread the gravel for us. If there's a tin horn or something needs to be placed, we can have the tin horn installed at that same time. If they have a storm shelter, it may be applicable to schedule that storm shelter at that time. Next step, if you're ordering a porta potty, we need to mark the location and the delivery where we want the porta potty. It needs to be somewhere close by the road, where they can get in there and access it easy. It needs to be out of the way with trucks coming in or out. Can't be in the way of materials being delivered. So we need to pick the right location, preferably downwind. Next thing it does is to order steel for the footings. It does not apply if your contractor has a turnkey bid. If it's a turnkey estimate, you won't need to worry about that, ordering the footing of the steel or any form material. Step number 10, schedule the foundation contractor. You'll need to be on site with that subcontractor when he comes out there. You don't want to just assume that he knows which way the house goes, even though you have the building pad already done. We want to be sure that you're there. You hand him the set of plans. You discuss which way that house is going to set, and so he just don't assume it. After that, we're going to contact U-Build-It for another site visit. Every time it says contact U-Build-It for a site visit, it's your responsibility to call us. At that particular site visit, we're going to review the clearing of the pad. You'll also see where it says checklists. We have checklists and the checklist number. Back in a couple of pages back, we have stage 1 checklist, stage 1 site visit checklist. We have corresponding checklists, which that goes with that particular site visit. So I want to be sure we use the appropriate checklist. That has to do with what we're looking at that particular site visit. The next step, we're going to contact the framer to notify him of progress. Again, we want to try to keep you looking at 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead of time. We don't want to start looking for a framer when we need a framer. We want that framer already to be on his schedule. So at this time, we're letting him know. We have a building pad already. We have forms being set already. So we want to let him know we're probably 3 weeks away from being ready for that framer. So pencil us in. Let's get on his schedule. The next step, it says schedule the plumber in the coordination with the stem wall. On a post-tension foundation, we don't have stem walls. We just have forms and footings. They'll set batter boards, and they'll set the forms, and they'll set the footings. So whatever the case, whatever we set, whatever kind of foundation that we're using, we want to be sure that we have the that we coordinate the plumber after either the forms are set or after the stem wall is set. The next thing, it says plumbing before HVAC. If you happen to be putting your HVAC in the floor, which very few people do in our region anyway anymore, you want to be sure to have the plumbing in before you put in the HVAC. Next step, it says schedule HVAC contractor. That is only if it's going into the floor. If it's not, you don't need to worry about that. It's not going to apply. Then we're going to contact the framer again to notify him of progress. It seems like it's a little bit close because we just contacted him up here 2 more steps. But since then, what we've done is we've talked to the plumber. We know we have a tighter window of when the plumber's going to be able to start, so we're able to give that framer a little bit more of a definite start date. It's all about communication. Okay, then they're going to do the excavation of the footings, install the steel. If it was just a conventional footing and stem, we'd want to come out, actually look at the footing, make sure it's 18 inches deep, 16 inches wide, whatever is required in your region. Make sure the appropriate amount of steel is installed and the sizing. If you're using a post-tension foundation, all they're going to do, like I said earlier, is set the forms, set the batter boards, and set the 2x12 forms, and then dig the footing. Number 19, step 19, we're going to call and schedule U-Build-It for another site visit. If it was a conventional footing and stem, what we would be doing at that particular site visit is looking at the footing, looking at the steel inside of it. If we're using a post-tension foundation, we're going to skip to step 24. We're going to assume on this particular project we are doing a footing and stem, so a post-tension, we're going to skip 24. Keep in mind that you do need to follow the proper checklists for the kind of foundation that you're doing. It's something that we've added new. The book used to only refer to post-tension and conventional footing and stems applications. Now we've added pier and grade beam, monolithic pours, basements. So you want to be sure to check with your consultant to be sure that you use the proper checklist that apply to whatever type of foundation that you're using. Step 25 or step 24, we're going to schedule the concrete foundation contractor. Sorry about that. Foundation contractor. After we schedule him, we're going to install our ground plumbing. If you're going to put in HVAC in the floor, that'll be done after the ground plumbing. Step 27, order sand fill. If it's a turnkey bid, you won't need to worry about the sand fill because also it's going to be included in his bid. Step number 28, we're going to call U-Build-It to schedule your site visit before the sand fill. What we're going to be doing at that particular site visit is we're going to be inspecting your stem wall, your forms, your ground plumbing. And we need to be sure and use the proper checklist, which is going to be checklist 4 and 5. At that particular site visit, when we come out to check your ground plumbing, what we're going to do is we're going to help the client check the ground plumbing. We're not going to do it for you. We're going to help you. We're going to, in most cases, bring a scale out. We're going to show you how to take a scale. I'm going to show you how to read the numbers on the plans and show you how far from the exterior of the home or the interior of the forms, to the toilet drain. I'm going to check it from this direction. I'm going to check it from the other direction. And we're going to determine what number it should be, what that measurement should be. We're going to go out and pull a tape together. And we're going to do that on every single bit of plumbing in the house. Very important step that needs to be done. Nothing in our job description says we have to do it, but I know personally that I couldn't sleep at night if I didn't at least take an hour to check my ground plumbing. I had a case the other day. My client did not want to check the ground plumbing because it was cold and windy, and he felt that he trusted the plumber. I couldn't stand it. I said, no, I actually would like to check at least a couple of things for you, just because I can't sleep at night not knowing that we didn't check your ground plumbing, What we discovered was the plumber who laid it out on the form, he wrote on the form 7 foot 3 inches, which is 87 inches. The guy that was actually coming behind him doing the work, cutting the pipes and stuff, he misread that. He thought that said 73 inches, which is 6 foot 1 inch. Difference of 14 inches. So that very first toilet stool that was in that line right there was 14 inches off to begin with. Instead of when he get right ready to lay out the next, which was a tub, which was in that same line, instead of pulling from the outside form again, he pulled off the toilet stool, which was 14 inches wrong to begin with. And there ended up being 3 things right in a row that were all 14 inches off. And the client's eyes got about that big around, and he thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was off that far. And it's just a simple mistake that somebody made. And then we checked everything. He insisted, no, let's check it all. I see, and he's seen the value in what I was telling him and what I offered him by checking the ground plumbing. I see mistakes every day. It's not, that the plumber was incompetent or something. It was a simple mistake. This happened to be a very reputable plumber that we use all the time, and it was a simple mistake, and I'm glad that we took the time to catch it. After that, we're going to contact the framer to schedule to notify him of progress. We're letting him know now our ground plumbing's in, we're waiting on an inspection, rest of the forms to be set up in the slab. So we're probably within a week and a half, 2 weeks max, and we're ready for that framer. There should be no reason why that framer should not have us on his schedule now, and we should not have to wait when our project gets ready for him. The next thing you'll need to do is schedule a pest control contractor after the sand is filled before you pour the concrete. All you really need to do is select that pest control contractor and let your foundation guy know who you want to use. He will actually do the scheduling. He knows when he's going to put the sand in, and so he will coordinate with that pest control contractor. Just let him know who you want to use. When he calls them to come out and actually do the pre-treat, then the pest control contractor will usually contact you afterwards and say, hey, I've been scheduled to come out and pre-treat your sand, and they will ask for your billing address. Your consultant will be sure that process gets done. In our state, in Oklahoma here, it's state law that we have to have a termite pre-treat, and we have to get a certificate saying that it's been pre-treated for our closing before we can actually close on our permanent financing. After that, we're going to run conduit for if you want any floor plugs, or if you have a center island which requires electricity, we need to get the PVC in there before they pour before they pour the concrete. Here, a lot of our electricians like to do it after the sand is done, and some electricians like to do it after the ground plumbing before the sand is put in. It's totally up to your contractor how they want to use it. Visit with your consultant about that. After that, contact U-Build-It to schedule another site visit. At that site visit, we're going to come out, we're going to do foundation pre-pour, and it's checklist number 6. What we want to do is we want to come out and be sure everything is in place, that we want to be sure all inspections are done and it's stickered. We want to be sure that the termite pre-treat's been done and it is stickered. We want to check the floor plugs. If you have floor plugs that you want to put in, we want to be sure that everything is in there and we didn't miss anything. The checklists are very important. They act as excellent reminders. So I highly advise using your checklists. When I came to work for U-Build-It 5 years ago, I was like, I don't need those checklists. I don't need all that stuff. I don't need that book. I can help people build houses. I've did it 100 times. Once I got into the book and started learning the U-Build-It system, and I seen the checklist, I was like, wow, I'd give anything if I had these checklists when I was building. When I first started building, they would have saved me so much time, so much money, so much heartache and headache that I've had that nobody told me. I just assumed I relied on my subcontractors. So I highly advise that you use the checklists. After that, we're going to pour the concrete. If you was to add any color to your concrete, some people want to add colorant. It can be mixed in the truck. It's real expensive. It adds about $100 a yard to your concrete. So keep that in mind. It's probably not in your budget. All right, now our slab is poured. We're ready to start framing. Before any material is delivered to your site, it's vital that you have builder's risk insurance in place. In the back of our manuals here, we have contacts for people who actually provides builder's risk insurance. I think there's one in there called Partners Group. I think they have a built-in discount for all you Build It clients nationwide. We actually use their formula for estimating builder's risk insurance in the budget. So make sure, and also your lender may hold up your draws if you don't have a copy of the builder's risk insurance before you have any material delivered to your site. After that, we're going to order the lumber with the completion of the slab and builder's risk insurance in place. We're going to contact our framer again. We're going to let him know, when can you start? When do you want material delivered? We'll have the material delivered to the site. And then we're going to schedule our consultant to review our windows and our door orders before we place the order, and also fireplace. You can go out and pick out your fireplace, but I advise you don't necessarily need to buy the fireplace, but pick it out, and you need to get the spec sheet and be able to give it to the framer so he knows what size to frame the opening for the fireplace, if it's applicable. As far as ordering windows and doors, we don't want to just schedule the consultant to review the window order, because we don't want to be liable for that. We want to go to the actual meeting when you go to place the order. We want to sit down there as just an extra set of eyes, just to make sure that the subcontractor, the window supplier, doesn't make any mistakes. What he's going to do, he's going to get your plans, he's going to get him a piece of paper, and he's going to go around and he's going to look at every window. Okay, this is a 4050 single hung. This is a 2668, single hung. And he's going to go all the way around the plans, making him a list, and then he's going to go over to his computer and he's going to type it all up. And then he's going to bring it back and he's going to hand you and say, okay, I need you to sign right here and I need 50% of your money. At that time, I like to say, wait a second, let's see what you have here. Okay, and I like to go around the deal. Okay, this is this window right here. This is the 4050 single hung, and I like to put a number by it, number them, number one. I want to be sure that window matches what actually says on the plans right there. If it's within a foot of a doorway or 18 inches of the floor, it needs to be tempered glass. I want to see that description of that window says tempered glass. I want to be sure that he's ordering the correct window that has to be. And the reason I like for him to number them, when we get all the way around the list, if I end up with 23 windows, I want to see 23 windows on the list. Together, we look at each other. If we agree that all the windows are correct and his list is correct, he didn't make a typo or something over there, then we agree. We shake our head together. You sign it. You pay him half his money, whatever he wants, and we feel comfortable that we did everything we could to make sure our window order was right. Again, we're building confidence in our client. He's by now he's seeing that, hey, we got his back. That U-Builder is looking out for him, and we're not just sending him out there, sink or swim kind of deal. So very important that the client schedules us for that particular meeting when he orders those windows. After that, we want to, we're going to review stage 2. We'd like for you to come back into the office, review stage 2. We want to look back on your stage 1 budget, be sure where we are on stage 1. We want to look back at everything happened during stage 1. Take a deep breath, kind of get ready for stage 2. Make sure that everything went well. We're not having any budget issues, and then we want to review stage 2, the stage 2 flow chart, also at that time. And we'll do it just like we did at the stage 1 flow chart. We're going to go into detail what they're going to be doing, what they need to be doing. We want them to be making notes on our things to do list. I know I didn't touch as much as I probably should have on the things to do list, but as I was telling the client, selecting the bricks, all that. They need to be making notes on that. Some clients do. Sometimes at the end of the meeting, I have a client that'll need 2 of these pages because they're so detail oriented and they want to, and they're just super paying attention. You'll have the clients that won't put one single thing on here. You'll have to remind them a couple of times, things to do. You might want to make a note of that. You might want to make a note of that. Some of them do, some of them don't. You can almost tell how the project's going to go by the attention that you get from your client and the interaction. Not in all cases, but sometimes, After that, we want to contact U-Build-It for another site visit. This is when your framer starts. We're actually going to come out, we're going to look at the slab, see how the slab looks after it's poured. If it's going to get stained concrete or something like that, we may want to advise them. They might want to cover the slab, cover it with, we like to use house wrap. House wrap is something that covers it, it protects it, it breathes, it doesn't trap in moisture like Visqueen does. So whatever the case is, your consultant will be able to help you decide what we're going to do on the slab, if we even need to do anything. We like to be out there when the framer pops off the lines on the floor, just to make sure everything still hits in the walls. Even though we double check the ground plumbing, we want to be sure that, things get moved sometimes after you sand it. After we check the ground plumbing, everything seemed to be right. We agreed everything was right. Sometimes when you sand it, things get moved a little bit. When you pour concrete, things get moved a little bit. So we want to be out there when they pop the lines to make sure everything hits, all the plumbing's still hitting in the walls. If something's got moved a little bit or appears to be out of the wall, which might create a hump, we want to be there to advise the client, accordingly. Is it going to kill us to move this wall a ½ inch or whatever to get that plumbing in the wall where we don't have the hump? Some cases we can't move it because we have a certain dimension for, say a tub or something. It has to be 60 inches and we can't move that wall. So then the plumber's going to have to come back on top out, maybe chip out or something around to get the plumbing back in the wall. So again, we just want to try to look out for the clients and be sure that we don't have any issues. And then also at that particular meeting, we definitely want the framer, we want to be sure that he understands if we have any red line plans or anything like that, any changes that need to be done. We want you to have the plan with all the changes on it, so we're not having to go back and redo later and get into the change order business and all that stuff. After that, we're going to call you back into the U-Build-It office for our stage 2 meeting where we review your budget. We'll review everything that happened during stage 1, and then we will go over the stage 2 flow chart. We like it to come back into the office and do it because we have a controlled environment. We can sit down at a table. We're not out in the wind or something, or the cold on the back of a tailgate trying to conduct a meeting like that. We want them to come back in. Also, conveniently, it's the beginning of stage 2 is where they owe another 25% of their money. So advise your clients to bring their checkbook. Behind that is stage 2 construction summary. Everything that happened during stage 2. Everything that's going to be in stage 1, I'm sorry. This is stage 1 construction summary. Everything that's going to be happening in stage 1. I want you to review that. I want you to read that and understand again what's going to be happening in stage 1. Behind that is our stage 1 checklist. Again, very important that we go over this, that we use the stage 1 checklist. You'll find some of the new checklists, and they're all numbered, and they, they correspond with our stage 1 flow chart. For instance, when you get to like checklist number 4, you'll have several of them under 4 on checklist number 4 because it has to do with the various kinds of foundations. So you just need to be sure, get with your consultant, make sure that you're using the correct checklist. If you're using a post-tension foundation, checklist number 4 for post-tension. If you're using a monolithic, checklist number 4 for monolithic pours, and so forth and so on. Basements, we have a checklist specifically for basements, and it's checklist number 4 also. So we want to be sure that we're using the corresponding checklist that goes with the flow chart. Behind that is our stage 2 planning meeting, which will be our stage 2 construction schedule or stage 2 flow chart. This is what we'll be going over in our stage meeting, our second stage meeting. Behind that is stage 2 summary. Behind that, stage 2 checklists. Same way with stage 3. When we get to stage 3 planning meeting will be our stage 3 flow chart. Behind that, stage 3 summary. Behind that, stage 3 checklists. After that, the next tab is our congratulations survey. Woohoo, you did it, you built your house. What we want to do is we're going to come out and take some photos. After your house is cleaned, before you move, we want to come out and go through the house. We want to take a good gallery shot of it. Front of the house, the sides of the house, the back of the house, entryway. We're going to take good photos of the house before you move in. We're also going to bring you a survey out. It's a little, I don't know, maybe 12 question survey. Why did you use U-Build it? What was the best part of the build? What was the worst part of the build? What was your cost to build? What was your instant equity? Things like that. In our office, Bob reads every one of those. He knows what we need to do to improve. Behind that is our project info tab. This tells basically everything about the project. We have the client's address, phone numbers, email address, job address, all the information that we need for the client. We actually have another, this is called the construction manual. We actually have another manual just like this called the project manual, which we keep in our office. It doesn't have all the fluff and stuff in it, but it has all the important things, all the bids, all the information. So if the client happens to call up here to the office for some reason and needs somebody to review something with them, we can go grab their project manual. We can open up to the exact same page and we're looking at the exact same thing, and we can discuss it over the phone if need be. Behind that is copies of lien waivers. Very important before you write a check to anybody that you get a lien waiver signed. There's an example of filled out in red of how to fill out a lien waiver, and then there's several copies of lien waivers in the manual. All of our consultants usually carry other lien waivers with them, or just copies of lien waivers in case they need some that we can provide them. We usually also, when we send them the Excel spreadsheet of their budget, we'll go ahead and send them a copy of a lien waiver also that they can load and print their own if they need them. But very important that you get a lien waiver before you write anybody a check. You want your consultant to review the invoice and be sure that you have a lien waiver filled out, but prove it before you just write anybody a check. Behind the lien waivers is normally, what do we have there? Maybe a copy of your plans, small copy of the plans, elevations, another copy of the budget. I advise the client to take one of these copies of the budget out, staple it together, stick it in the front pocket of your construction manual, maybe another copy, keep it in your car. It's a lot easier than just go thumbing through this manual trying to find the copies of the budget when you need it. It's easy just to have additional copies and pull it out. There's usually copies of your initial site review. Whoever came out and did your site review gave the description of the property. There's usually copies in here under the project info of budget reviews, plan reviews that were done during the planning stage up until everything went to the bank, the spec meeting. We also have a spec meeting checklist in here. Very important, these spec meeting checklists. During the spec meeting, we have the clients actually fill these out, everything that we talked about. As far as utilities, site work, foundations, things like that. This is done in their own handwriting and signed. The consultant out on the project doesn't even have to be in the spec meeting to know what was discussed if we have this spec meeting checklist. I've had clients go back in the past and say, oh no, I'm supposed to have hardwood floors throughout the whole house. Well, your budget shows that you only have stained concrete. So we can go back through the manual and we can pull out this spec meeting checklist, which was done in their own handwriting, signed by them, and it says stained concrete. So they can't come back and say that, we discussed this if we didn't, or this is what I'm supposed to have. Again, here's the copies of our estimated budget, their extras list if they're doing any sweat equity, estimated plan review. Everything that we did up until this point is copied and put in this manual under project info. We also have some information. This we always put this in our manuals because the city of Edmond, they started enforcing it first. It's actually some straps that are required on the garage door openings. Every city and every municipality enforces it now, but the city of Edmond was the first one that started enforcing it, and it's actually these straps that goes across that attaches your garage door header to the shear walls. So we always just go ahead and put an example of that in there to make sure. Some of the people who are building out in the country that doesn't have inspections or any permit or anything out that, no more than those straps cost. We don't want the subcontractor to try to skip out on something just because it's not going to be inspected and enforced. No more than those things cost. They're $3 or $4 a piece. We want them to put them on there. If the city of Edmond thinks it's important enough, so do we. There's also an example of a plot plan that you probably would need if you're building in a city that's going to be getting a building permit application. They're going to require that you have a plot plan done. A lot of designers will do that and include it with the floor plan when you buy the floor plans. Some of them don't. Sometimes we have to help the client produce that in our office. Behind that is where all the good stuff is, utilities. Behind utilities are actually where we have a list of subcontractors that does particular things. Like, for instance, septic, well, and propane. That's part of utilities. So we provide them with a contact list of subcontractors that they could use. We are in no way recommending any of these subcontractors. The way these subcontractors got in our book is they called U-Build It, and they wanted the opportunity to bid on our projects. In order for them to get in the book, they had to provide us, they had to do a couple of projects for U-Build It clients without any issues. They had to provide us a copy of their general liability and workers' comp insurance. Since we're not a builder, we don't enforce that we have general liability and comprehensive insurance on each one of these subcontractors. So it's your responsibility as the builder to ask for that, to make sure that they have general liability and workers' comp before they set foot on that job. But this is actually a list of people that you could use if you wanted to, say for instance, a septic system. There's several people who do contracts for septic system. You don't have to use any of these. You can use your own if you want. You can solicit bids from other subcontractors. It's your project. You build it. You do it how you want to. But this gives you a place to start if you don't know anybody. So we have contractors for septic systems, well contractors, propane. If you needed perk tests or contractors to come out and do soil profiles or things for DEQ, we have contacts for those in here. We have contacts for our major utility contractors, OG&E, ONG for natural gas, Okie-Dig, contacts in there for, if you need to locate underground utilities before you dig. Behind that is a spec sheet. This was the actual spec sheet that was filled out in the spec meeting by whoever did their spec meeting. It actually says on here, OG&E, propane. We do have city water, public water. So again, it tells every single thing that you discussed in that spec meeting. Your consultant, again, would not have to even been in that meeting to know what was discussed because it's all right here on the spec sheet. Behind that is flyers and bids. These are actually bids or flyers from different contractors. This particular contractor does aerobic systems, conventional systems. He does storm shelters. So you'll find his flyer behind these tabs that are applicable to things that he does. Here's actually somebody that does water well drilling, and a copy of his contract and agreement. Next tab, site work. Contractors who do site work, who do building pad preparation, who do trees, clears trees, puts in tin horns. Again, we're not recommending any of these any of these subcontractors. They're just a start for you. It's almost like a little mini phone book of subcontractors that you can make a decision of who you want to use. Temporary facilities. We have something for every single aspect of the build. If you need debris containers, if you decide you can't do your own construction clean, we have contractors who actually do construction clean. We have surveyors, engineers. Again, this is the spec sheet, what we discussed for the site work. There's usually an allowance, how much money was allowed in your budget for that particular amount of site work. Length of the driveway, what was discussed during whether there's going to be concrete or asphalt or gravel. That's all in the spec sheets. The next tab, foundation. Foundation is usually where we have our first actually hard bids. Depending on what kind of foundation that you're going to be using, whether footing and stem, monolithic, turn down, basements, whatever, here's all the subcontractors that do that. Since we said earlier we were going to treat this as a post-tension foundation, project, then you would look down here for post-cable tension contractors. If you needed any kind of materials or anything, say it wasn't included in the turnkey bid, here's contacts for materials, lumber yards, concrete, sand and gravel suppliers, termite pre-treat, basements, safe rooms. Spec sheet again. Specification sheet for foundations. Usually when we send everything out for bid, we put the names of who we send it out to for bid at the top of the list. And then here's actually hard bids for foundations. What we do is we review that. We would look at the budget first, go back, look at the budget, find out what our budget is for foundations, and then we would review the bids. Say they have $10,000 or $11,000 in their budget for foundations. We come back and we look at the bids, and we help them determine, okay, what are they getting for that amount of money, and then we compare it to the budget to see if they're under budget or over budget, if they need to keep looking or they need to negotiate, whatever the case. We help them compare the bids to the different bids together. This particular bid is for a monolithic foundation. We requested in the spec sheet that they give us a bid for a post-tension foundation, which they didn't. So you can't compare these two bids together because they're not for the same scope of work. So that's what we do. We help them review and understand what they're getting for their amount of money compared to their budget. And there is a tab for every single thing to complete the project. Framing materials. Since we just said that we would like to pick a framer first and have him give us a material list, we're not going to have a bid usually for framing materials in here yet. We want that framer to provide us the list. Then we will send it off to get the framing material bids, and then we'll be able to compare. Behind that, framing labor, contractors who do framing labor. Lumber yards for material. And you kind of see the pattern. The way I usually try to educate the client on how to navigate through the book is look at the tab, for instance, framing labor. You're going to find labor, you're going to find materials, you're going to have the spec sheet, which is the spec sheet is what we talked about during the spec meeting. Behind that is going to be what we call the worksheets. Our worksheets are actually, they're estimating. It's what we generated after getting all the specifications in the spec meeting. We type all this into our computer, and it generates this worksheet. The worksheet is for estimating budgets. It's how we come up with estimated budget. We're constantly having to update that with the rising cost of materials. We change our formulas to make sure that we have adequate amount of material or labor. If labor happens to go up, that's all done with our worksheets. Behind the worksheets is usually our bids and our flyers. So behind every tab, and I usually, when I get to this point, the client understands how to navigate through here. I look at the tab, I have labor, I have material. Behind material, I have spec sheet. Behind my spec sheets, I have worksheets, and behind the worksheets is flyers and bids. And it's that way all the way through the manual. Same way with every tab. Labor, material, spec sheet, worksheet, flyers, and bids. Some of them will write that down on their things to do list just so they can help them navigate through there. Instead of like where's the bids, and start digging through. Well, go to your tab, you look for your labor, your material, your spec sheet, your worksheet, and then your bids. Most of the time, the clients are done. They understand. They've already been sitting in this meeting for 2 hours. They're done. They're overwhelmed. They don't want to know anymore. Some will want to look at something, want to review HVAC bid or something. We fall back to the HVAC tab. We look at the bids. We look at the budget. We help them make decisions, if they want to use that contractor or not. We tell them the good and the bad, what we know about them. We don't recommend them. We never use the word recommend. Sometimes I'll tell them, I heard a lot of clients use that particular subcontractor. They haven't had any issues with them. But don't take my word for it. You call them, you interview them, you make sure they have insurance, you make sure they have references. You do everything that we advised you to do in the beginning during your planning, and then you make the decision of who you want to use. I usually will go to the exterior veneer page because they'll want to know, okay, if I want to find out how many bricks I need. Say I'm going to call and find out when I'm ordering brick. If I want to find out how ready available that brick, they're going to want to know a brick number. So our book is labeled exterior veneers, not brick, just because we want to cover everything. We want to be able to cover stucco. We want to be able to cover siding houses. They're not all bricks, so we need to be able to cover everything. So we just labeled it exterior veneers. So you go through the exterior veneers, you work your way back till you get to the brick worksheet, if that's what they're looking for is brick. We go back to the brick worksheet and it will actually show a brick count. And this is just an approximate of what we figured based on the lineal foot of the exterior walls and the height of the walls. We figured this particular house is going to come up with 9,550 bricks or 9,150 bricks. We advise them to add about another 1,000 onto that. We're not ordering off that number. All we're doing is finding out. We're saying, okay, we need roughly, add another 1,000, 10,500 bricks or whatever. We're just trying to find out how ready available 10,500 bricks are. We're not going to order that amount because, and the reason why is we really like for the brick salesman to come out and measure the house after it's framed to get his accurate order. If it's something that does need to be special ordered, we might even want to add a little bit more than that just to be sure. We don't want to order too, it's going to take too much to get the bricks. I don't want to end up with, 100 bricks short and I can't get any more, and I got to wait another, 2 months to get it. So I want to be sure. And you just need to accept the fact that you're probably going to have too many bricks. Our estimate is really super close, again, but it's not exact. It's not perfect. We never built your house before, so we don't know exactly, but we're close. When we can order enough, you can, use it for a mailbox, use the excess for, planters, things like that. If it's a common brick that they use, sometimes they will come back and pick up the excess. It just depends on your brick company, and that's just something that you'll just have to discuss with them. Then I usually ask the client, is there anything else you want to look at? I'll be glad to sit here in this meeting all day long with you and go over whatever you need to. I want you to feel comfortable when you leave this meeting. I've already gone over a lot with them, with the client. Most of them, like I said, they're exhausted at this time. They're done. They're wanting to go. So what I do after that, as I normally tell them, I tell them what's going to happen at the end of when we come out to their job sites. We're going to be taking photographs of what's been done. As consultants, we look back at what's been done. We actually have a consultant's report that we fill out in the field with the clients. Say, for instance, we go out to the job site, say the forms are set, the ground plumbing's installed, then what's what we do in our reports. As soon as we show up out to the job site, we hop out, we start taking photographs of what's been done. we put and that's what we write in our report. You know, building pads complete, forms are set, footings dug, ground plumbing installed. If we check the ground plumbing with the client, we put in our report. Together, client and I, we check the ground plumbing together. If there's any issues, I put in there how I advise the client to handle the issue. Contact the plumber, let him know, hey, we double checked the plumbing. A couple of things where we found, you know, seemed to be off. Have the plumber come back out and let's review it together and figure out how you come up with your number and your measurement, and we'll show you how we come up with ours, and then we'll agree to disagree whether it's actually wrong or not. On our consultants' reports, we have to review the bids for upcoming phase of construction. So if we reviewed a bid with somebody for something that's coming, yes, we put yes, and we put a brief description of what we discussed, of what bids that we reviewed. Are the municipal instructions to be addressed? Say, for instance, we have a failed inspection. We'll put whatever the failed inspection is on there, and we'll put if the issue has been corrected and it's been called back in for inspection or not. Did the client bring the construction manual to the site visit? Yes or no? Absolutely important that you bring this construction manual to your site visit. Without it, we can't really have a site visit, and we're actually not supposed to actually do a site visit if they don't show up with their construction manual. There's nothing to really talk about. So very important that they bring their construction manual to every site visit. The next question is the client using their flow chart and checklist? Yes, we want them to use their flow chart and checklist. Is the client over or under budget? We want to know that. We ask those questions, the hard questions. You know, are you over budget? How are you doing on your budget? They should be under on everything. You have to keep in mind, though, that every line item on that budget is not going to be exact. It's going to be close, but again, we've never built your house before. Everything is an estimate and an approximate. There will be certain line items that things are just over. We can't get a bid that's going to be under that particular thing. They're all going to be a little bit over, but there will be several other line items in that budget that's going to be under that will make it up for it. So your budget is basically a good guideline to go by, and if you stick to that and try to focus on every single line item and try not to go over that line item, it works out. It works itself out. If you are over budget, is there a plan to replace the funds? Usually it's either sweat equity or cash out of my pocket or whatever the case is. We put in a brief description of what it is. The next question on the deal, and the last question, is there a budget or a phase meeting needed in the office? So when they start approaching that stage 2 and stage 3 phase meetings, what we do is we can actually put yes, we can on there, so the people in our office can try to schedule that when everybody can be available for that particular meeting to come back in to do the budget meeting and the next phase meeting. Ideally, it's whoever did the budget, the bidding coordinator who did the budget actually would need to be in that meeting also, so they could review budgets together. After that, we tell the clients we have normal business hours. You have to kind of set the ground rules. Our business hours are 8:30 to 5:30 Monday through Friday. We are available 24/7 for an emergency. In my 5 years being here, there's never been an emergency. There's very, very few times that there is an emergency that I can do anything about at that particular time. If something comes up in the middle of the night, I'm probably not going to just jump up and go running out there. If it's that big of an emergency, there's nothing I can do about it anyway. But I do want the clients to know that we are available if they need us for an emergency. As far as calling us after hours or before hours, we try to discourage that. We're a professional consulting firm. They wouldn't call their banker or their lawyer or their doctor or whatever after hours, and we won't like to be treated the same way. We all have families, and we like to go home at night and enjoy our families and not be on the phone answering questions for clients. Sometimes if you have a quick, simple question, you can shoot me, after hours, a text, or on the weekend. If you're at Home Depot or somewhere and you need to know what length drywall screws to pick up for your contractor, most of the times I'm going to answer, 1.25 inches or whatever. I'm going to give you a brief, but I'm not going to get into a major discussion with something after hours. If you happen to call during the day, even during business hours, and you don't reach me or send me a text, I always advise you to leave a message. Understand that if I'm with another client, I'm normally not going to answer a call or a text. That's their time that they're paying for, and you'll understand and appreciate it when I'm on your site with you. So those are kind of basic ground rules that you need to set up front. Again, so the people, the clients understand that and expect that. In most cases, there won't be an issue with that, and they won't have a problem. Anyway, that wraps up the construction manual presentation, and hopefully that helps in when you start presenting and doing your own construction manual presentation. Some of you'll take some of, hopefully all of it, all the information that I just discussed with you, and you'll have to make it your own. You know, you add your own stories and your own, and make it your own. Anyway, that's all I have, and look forward to seeing you next time.